Hello and welcome to Letters Home, a story of a World War II B-17 pilot from Lowell, Michigan, in his own words. And he just so happens to be my grandpa. I'm your host, Annie Whitlock, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, my dad, Mitch McMahon, my aunt, Lori McMahon Summerfield, and Dale Croft from the Lowell Historical Museum.
In each episode of Letters Home, we're going to dive into letters written by my dad during his time in World War II that he sent to his parents, siblings, and friends back home in Lowell, Michigan. We'll be reading his own words and giving some context as to what was happening in the world and in Lowell at the time he wrote these.
In this episode, we learn about the deadly battle at Schweinfurt. We hear about life in England, and we read how Dad's new ship got its name.
Well, we have a correction, kind of, I believe. Maybe
I guess an update.
An
Not
update,
necessarily a
correction and addition.
yeah,
it's sort of
yeah,
both.
yeah.
So previously we had, way back when we started this, we thought that we knew how many people from Lowell had passed away in the war. But we have now maybe uncovered some more information. Dale,
Yes, we have.
what did you find?
Well, I was lucky at our board meeting of the museum last night that Nancy Roth is part of and works for the Lowell Department of Works. And she also is in charge of Oakwood Cemetery, come running into me and saying, Dale, here's an update. So we have a few more young gentlemen from Lowell that paid the ultimate price in World War II. These 4 or 5 gentlemen here are buried in Oakwood. Stanley E. Guild, who was killed in Okinawa on 5/11/1945. Clifford Guild, his brother, was a Marine, killed in action in Pele on 9/18/1944. William B. Briggs was part of the Army Ski Patrol, was killed in Italy on 2/22/1945. Levant Potter was part of the Thunderbird Division and was killed in France on 10/15/1944. Lloyd Kirkus was part of the Army Ski Patrol, was killed in Italy on 4/8/1945. And Gerald L. Berry of the 319th Infantry 80 Division, part of Patton's Third Army, was killed in France on 10/8/1944. And Garrett Skur was a Marine, was killed in Okinawa on 5/11/1945. Now, there's some other gentlemen here that are not buried in Oakwood. Raymond Barrett, Philip Covert, James Jespers, Harlan Lee, Ted McDonald, Erwin Newmer, and L.J. Newmer, another pair of brothers that passed in World War II. Calvin Preston, William Reed, Lawrence Ridgway, and of course the 5 people that we talked about earlier, Gerald Ellis, who was the first Lowell person to be killed in World War II, and is one of the reasons why the Clark Ellis is named after him. Lee Hogue, Hoyt Phillips, one of your dad's friends. James Reed and Robert Phineas we talked about in prior.
Yeah.
So 23 young gentlemen from Lowell did not come home.
Yeah, that's a lot more than we had originally thought.
We had 6, 5 or 6.
Yeah, we thought we'd had 5 or 6.
Yeah.
A lot of those men seem to be killed toward the end of the war, too.
And some of these are buried all over in different areas of the world.
Okay.
Wow.
An important update.
Yes. Glad we read their names and remembered them on here. And thanks to Nancy Roth for giving us the update. That's great.
Yeah.
So we're going to start today with a pair of letters that Bruce wrote to his parents in late October of 1943. And they give a really good description of his life at Thurley. So in his own words.
Saturday night. Dear Mom and Dad, received 2 letters from you today, September 23rd and 27th. Guess that my last letter saying Roger be out hunting ducks was about right. I'm so sorry to hear that Vern is ill, especially during hunting season. I want to say right now that you folks write swell letters. You seem to say just the things I'd like to hear, and you tell me about things that mean so much to me. Your description of the hill with all its fall colors was swell. Although it's fall here, the flowers continue to bloom. There's a patch of daisies just outside my door, and down the lane a ways there's a lot of big geraniums with big scarlet blooms. Now that winter is coming on, perhaps the mail service won't be as fast because there won't be the planes crossing. Never mind, though. They'll get to you eventually, and you can try to read them in order, although the way I ramble on, they don't follow any pattern. You spoke of reading about raids, and I'm wondering if I was on them. Well, I can't tell you what raids, but you can be sure I've been on most of them. I'm glad you read about John Strohan Tinko being a prisoner of war. This shows that that so many missing in action doesn't mean death. Parachutes are damn reliable these days. Good are your money back. Yes, my crew is still intact, although I have a new co-pilot because they're about to check Reed out as first pilot. You ask about a crumpet. Well, nowadays they don't have a real crumpet. Usually with tea they serve little sandwiches of bread and fish paste with perhaps a small piece of cake, like our own, thrown in. Because the average Britisher's meals today is so skimpy that tea time kind of fills that empty hole in his stomach, but not the one in his head. I don't even mean anything by that crack. It just seemed a good quip to put in. Say, I'll sketch you a picture of our barracks, which are typical of all ETO. Apologies to Rembrandt. Maybe the censors, if they spot this, they might think that picture would divulge military info. Ain't I modest, though? To the censor, honest, I'm not trying to put anything over on you. Since I last wrote, last night I guess, I've received 3 letters from Mark A. So you can see my mail situation's okay. But don't relax now. I still like to get mail better than anything I know of here. I'm getting sleepy now, so I'll close. It's only 9:30, but I guess I'm getting old. God bless you, Mother and Dad. Your loving son, J. Bruce. P.S. Today is Clean Sheet Day. Boy, do they feel good.
I mean, who doesn't like clean sheets?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He did,
Better.
in fact, sketch a picture of his barracks. Apologies to Rembrandt, as he says. It's very good, which, of course, you can see in the letters on the Historical Museum website, and I'll also put that in our Instagram account as well. He mentions that he got a lot of mail from Marg A., so we're going to read an excerpt from a letter on October 15th, 1943, in his own words.
I received a long letter from Marg today, and she said she's going to try to get a picture of me from you. One in uniform. Guess she doesn't know that I never had any made. She was also saying that she didn't see a priest yet, but that she was going to. Do you think there's room in your hearts for just one more daughter? Lord knows you've given so much of yourselves to those kids you have now that it'll be straining you some. Still, she's such a really fine person inside that I know that you'll see I've done well in selecting her as the future missus. Without any questions, she is the nicest girl with the straightest set of morals of anyone I've ever known. But that's all in the future, and it's present I'm supposed to be writing about.
Aw, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice to hear a letter from your dad to your mom? Sort of.
Talking about mom.
Talking about your mom.
Yeah.
That's really cute. All right. On October 25th, 1943, he wrote Frank and Lotta another letter in his own words.
Monday night. Dear Mother and Dad, guess my last letter, as I remember, was a bit on the morbid side. At least it was rather a cold statement of facts as things are here. Truthfully, though, this combat definitely proves to me that your very good temperament, nerves, heart, and mind that I so quickly and luckily inherited gives me the best body and brain anyone could possess for this sort of thing. Now, at a time when good health is an absolute necessity, I'm healthy as I'll get out. Maybe I'm lucky. I know I am because I'm way overdue for a good cold or cough, but as yet they're missing. This combat does change the fellows. It's particularly noticeable among the few I knew before. However, in this score, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. I don't believe you'll notice any great change in me, and I've been through the mill over here, too. Incidentally, don't let those 89 in 3 days bother you. Of course, you feel the loss of that many men and ships, but this is war, and we must expect those things. Say, where's Mac Fonger going? Byrne wrote that they gave him a farewell party. Is he going into service? In answer to some of your questions, we eat at tables of 6 at a table, tablecloths and armed dining chairs. Very nice, huh? Food is served in dishes, and you serve yourself like at home. I'm glad you got a hold of a lighter, as I know how scarce they must be. As for the derivation of the phrase sent to Coventry, I asked an Englishman here, and he said that believed it originated before the bombing. In fact, he thought it came from the Bible or Old English history. Don't worry about my vocabulary. I'll not return with any limey accent, I promise. Also tell Sis her package will be sent to me all right. They're very good about mail. I'm so glad Mark had a chance to talk to you. Hope you can get to know her as I do. I think you'll regard me as lucky. Yes, cheerio is the standard greeting around here, so I'll say cheerio and good night, my dear Mom and Dad. Your loving son, Jay Bruce.
He's been through the mill,
Yeah.
as he says. It's about as descriptive as he gets. He's
Yeah.
been through the mill.
Let's not tell him too much.
I know. So that 89 in 3 days that he's writing about, I'm sure, is a reference to Black Week and all those missions that he flew that we talked about in last week's episode, right? So he's lost a lot of people from his squadron, his bomb group in those 3 days. So, he says he's been through the mill. Incidentally, though, don't let it bother you. Then he immediately changes the subject to Mac Fonger. Do you even know who that is?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. We know Mac Fonger. We all know Mac Fonger. Owned a grocery store here in town.
All right. Well, where did he go? Did he go to
Rick
the war?
Fonger's dad.
Okay.
And I don't know. I'll have to ask Rick about where he went. I'm assuming it was the service.
Yeah.
And a going
And
away
what
party.
branch?
for him.
And what branch?
Yeah,
and where?
I'll have to ask him.
Yeah, find out. So we got another possible person from Lowell that served that we know of. So unless he was going somewhere else, maybe new job or something, he's not
No.
even related at all.
You've heard of Rosie Fonger, Mac and Rosie Fonger, or not? Maybe not.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah,
That sounds
you're young.
familiar.
You're young.
You don't know about Rosie's famous olive burger?
She gave me my first job. Yeah, I
Oh,
worked at a restaurant.
So good.
okay. All right. Interesting. Well, it's time now to get into our segment where we talk about what was going on in the world and in Lowell in October 1943. So we're going to read a V-mail from Bruce from October 19th, 1943, where he talks about some world news and Lowell news in his own words.
Dear Mother and Dad, is everything okay with you? It is with your youngest. We're having a bit of English weather tonight. It's darn nice and cozy in my room with my coal stove, a nice dull red. I just returned from the snack bar and I have finished reading my London newspaper, the Daily Express. Nothing much of interest in the paper this evening except for the exchange of prisoners and Eden in the Hull in Moscow. Sure hope those boys get together. Might mean a lot as fast as post-war conditions are concerned. The radio program tonight was exceptionally good tonight. Fred Waring played a lot of good pieces, and I even listened to The Lone Ranger. You see, we get an American broadcast over here each day that is the best of the programs that you have at home. Saves having to hunt all over the goal for a program, this having only one American broadcast. Bet you right about now, you're starting for the bridge tournament. At least with 6 hours difference in time, this should be about right. And Dad, you're probably headed for Harry's to indulge in a bit of rum, right? Helen wrote saying you both were feeling well, and that sure makes me feel 100%. I received another letter from her today. Tell her a V-mail is swell because it doesn't take too long to write and it means a lot to receive. Gotta close my damper, pull down the blackout curtains, get into bed, and get a good night's sleep. My prayers are with you for our being together again. Your loving son, J. Bruce.
That's the good stuff in here. Dale, can you tell us who Fred Waring was?
Waring.
Waring. We debated
Waring.
it. It's Waring, though.
Waring,
Fred Waring.
yeah. Yeah, I
So
said
who
it
is
right.
this guy?
Frederick Malcolm Waring Sr. was an American musician, band leader, choral director, and radio and television personality, sometimes referred to as America's singing master and the man who taught America how to sing. His journey began on June 9th, 1900 in Tyrone, Pennsylvania. During his teen years, he formed the Fred Waring Banjo Orchestra that often played at fraternity parties, proms, and dances and achieved local success. During his studies at Penn State University, where he studied architectural engineering, his banjo orchestra became so successful that he decided to abandon his education to tour with the band, which eventually became known as Fred Waring and his Pennsylvanians.
Okay.
In 1922, here's a bit of Michigan history that gave him his career. In 1922, Waring's band attracted attention at the University of Michigan Student Festival in a gymnasium in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which led to a 6-week booking at a local theater. That engagement led to bookings in Detroit and other large cities, launching Waring's national career.
Oh.
So U of M.
There you go. Built
Even though
right
I'm-
there. Okay.
Even though I'm a Spartan, I'll give Michigan credit for that.
Okay.
From 1923 until 1932, Waring's Pennsylvanians were among Victor Records' best-selling bands. During World War II, Waring and his ensemble appeared at war bond rallies and entertained the troops at training camps. He composed and performed dozens of patriotic songs, his most famous being My America. Waring expanded into television with The Fred Waring Show, which ran on CBS television from 1948 to 1954 and received several awards for Best Musical Program. In 1983, the 83-year-old Waring was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, the nation's highest honor for a civilian. Waring died of a stroke at his summer home on July 29, 1984. But Waring was more than just a musician. He also was an entrepreneur. In the 1930s, inventor Frederick Jacob Osis went to Waring for financial backing for an electric blender he had patented, which became known as the Waring blender, B-L-E-N-D-O-R, the first modern-day electric blender. The Waring blender became an important tool in hospitals for the implementation of certain diets, as well as the vital scientific research device. Get this, Jonas Salk used it while developing his polio vaccine.
Oh, my goodness.
In 1954, the millionth Waring blender was sold.
Wow. Okay. So, musician and investor in blenders.
I know,
Yeah,
all
crazy.
over the place. But
Definitely not where I thought you were going with that. All right.
It's kind of like Mitch and I starting little bands, and he ended up having a career of it, But we didn't start banjo band.
Not yet.
We didn't teach America to sing. What the heck?
Anyway.
America to
Yeah,
sing.
very interesting information on here.
Okay.
The
So
blender thing was just threw me off.
that was weird. That's
Yeah.
a very weird thing.
But I had to put that in.
I like how he also got to listen to the Lone Ranger. That is one thing that I distinctly remember seeing on the TV
Oh, there you go. At our
at
house.
Grandpa's house. Yeah,
Wow, cool.
in that down on that big old black and white TV.
Okay.
Lone Ranger. Yeah.
Hi ho, silver. away.
Yeah. I mean, but I definitely remember that.
Wow, you are old.
I am old. I mean, it was like repeats. It wasn't
yeah.
like a
Well, yeah.
first run. I'm not that old. But I didn't actually realize the Lone Ranger was this old even then, but that's okay. What about Harry's? He's referring to Frank going to Harry's. Was that a bar? Was that a
For a
friend
little
of
bit of
Frank?
rum?
Yeah, for
I
a
thought
little
he
bit
was
of
a
rum.
teetotaler. I didn't think he drank, but
I don't know.
Well, we talked about the rum crowd, remember?
yeah.
But maybe
I
this
remember
is what
that,
he
but I
means.
didn't realize he was part of the rum crowd. But I guess
know.
maybe-
You got it for
Didn't they
Harry's.
play gin rummy? I thought when they said rum, I was thinking it was card game.
Oh, a bit of rum?
Oh, like with the bridge.
'Cause he
it
played
was talking
cribbage
about
and
bridge.
stuff.
Hey, we're
so
just
I-
talking about
okay.
bridge.
All right.
I could see, when we were talking about bridge and cards, I was thinking,
Wow.
Okay, that's a good point. Here I went right to alcohol.
Well, yeah, we went,
it might be gin rummy.
Oh, yeah.
Because he played cribbage with guys, too.
Yeah.
Well, we were
probably it.
We were just
Yeah.
talking about the Blockbuster cocktail last week, so maybe that's fresh on my mind. Okay, so maybe Harry's is just a friend of Frank's he went and played cards with or something. I don't know. I do know what the reference is to Eden and Hall in Moscow.
Yeah, what's
because I
that?
had to look that up. Hall is referring to Cordell Hull, who was the U.S. Secretary of State at the time, and Eden is Anthony Eden, the British Foreign Secretary, who I think became Prime Minister later, if I remember from The Crown. That's where I get my history, my British history from. They met in late October 1943 with Stalin in order to agree on fighting until Germany surrenders unconditionally and to establish a United Nations after the war. So Bruce was right that it was going to mean a lot for the post-war conditions.
He was right about that.
And then it all went south, but that's okay. He didn't know that at the time. But yeah, so that was an actual the news world event that happened in this week that Bruce was writing it. So now we need to get into information that we know about Bruce's flight missions. So for this information, remember, we talked about this before, we have to consult flight records and mission diaries from the historical website of the 306 Bomb Group and all of its squadrons. And before we get into it, we'll read a short letter that Bruce wrote on October 20th, 1943, that kind of sets the scene here. So in his own words.
Wednesday, October 20th, 1943. Dear Mother and Dad, well, this letter will be short, but it should be a bit gratifying for you as well as me. Not that I think that this is much of consequence, but it isn't, and its intrinsic value is next to nothing. Still, well, it all boils down to the fact that I was cited today. I am recommended for the Air Medal for meritorious, singularly exemplary action while on a raid over Germany, etc., etc. And you'll notice I can't spell those silly darn adjectives either. Besides telling you that I'm going to get the Air Medal, there isn't any more I can tell you about it. So you'll have to wait till we get together again. I'll have to close now, but just wanted you to know that I was going to get the medal, probably in a week. All my love and prayers, your loving son, Jay Bruce.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't exactly know, we don't know which mission he won this for, since his letters are censored, of course. And the documents from the Historical Society doesn't say what it was exactly for either, but it does list that on this time, it's like it lists Bruce and a few other people that were, commissioned for the Air Medal or whatever.
Okay.
We do know that Bruce flew a mission on October 20th, the same day that he wrote this letter about the Air Medal. The mission was to Düren, Germany, and we don't know a ton about this one other than what is from the combat diary. So, Dad, do you want to read what's from the combat diary?
Okay. Breach for Düren. In the Ruhr, the squadron flying in low position today found a solid front inside the Dutch coast and turned back near Hamstedt without bombing, since our crews were carrying incendiaries, which would have been comparatively useless on one of the neighboring airfields as a target of opportunity. Captain L.G. Cook and Lieutenants Paul F. Paulson, J. Bruce McMahon, Joseph Gay, Donald Wadley, and William Katz and their crews made the trip without incident.
Yay, no incidents. Phew.
Yeah.
And apparently they didn't drop any bombs this time. But one mission that was a little more eventful happened right around this time as well, October 15th, 1943, which is known as Black Thursday. So we had Black Week last week, which sort of culminates with Black Thursday, which is the second mission to Schweinfurt. And we'll have Dale tell us a little bit about this famous October mission to Schweinfurt.
Well, Black Thursday was a name given to the second bombing raid on Schweinfurt, Germany, which took place on October 14, 1943. The raid was part of the Combined Bomber Offensive, CBO, a campaign to reduce German infrastructure and establish air supremacy. On that day, the entire force of 291 B-17 bombers of the 8th Air Force's 1st and 3rd Air Divisions were sent to attack the ball-bearing factories at Schweinfurt. Despite a failed attempt to create an aerial division using B-24s heading to the North Sea, the Germans tracked the Americans' B-17 formation with radar the moment it took to the air. As the P-47s cleared the area, radar-guided German fighters swooped in on the bombers. Single-engine German fighters, 3 and 4 abreast, attacked head-on, firing 20-millimeter cannons at close range. Their first wave was quickly followed by a second, consisting of heavy twin-engine Ju-88 fighters. The larger fighters not only fired heavy cannons, but also rockets launched from beneath their wings. Firing these projectiles from up to 1,000 yards away, the Ju-88s could safely remain out of the effective range of the bombers' defensive guns. A single rocket could easily destroy a bomber in any one attack. Shooting rockets at the lead bomber, the Ju-88s forced the American formation to break up as individual B-17s conducted evasive actions. The absence of enemy fighters along with clear weather was welcome, but the Luftwaffe flak guns now engaged the formations. Air crews avoided direct hits, could still hear the sound of shrapnel as it penetrated or ricocheted off their bombers' thin aluminum skin. While gunners could shoot back at pursuing fighters, there was nothing to be done regarding the flak. They had to ride through the barrage. Finally, bomb loads were dropped and air crews turned for the long journey back to England, as enemy fighters continued to torment the battle-worn B-17s all the way back. Despite the mauling the formations took, their bombs accurately struck the butt-bearing complex. One of 1,122 high-explosive bombs dropped. 143 landed on the factory area with 88 direct hits. Despite the accuracy of the raid, however, later analysis eventually determined that the German ball-bearing production dropped by a mere 10%. So all of that, 10%.
All that work for not much. Oh, geez.
60 B-17s were shot down by German fighters or anti-aircraft artillery, flak. 17 B-17s were so damaged they crashed or were beyond repair. 594 crewmen were listed as missing in action, presumably killed in action. 65 men were captured and held as prisoners of war. Among the American units who paid the heaviest price were the 305th Bombing Group, losing over 130 men, 36 which were killed. The 306 bombing group stationed at Thoroughly Air
That's
Dome,
Bruce's.
losing 100 men. 35 died on the mission or of their wounds, and 65 were captured to become prisoners of war. This bombing mission was a turning point in the air war's strategy, in that it forced a reassessment of their daylight strategic bombing doctrine and highlighted the need for better fighter escort protection when attacking deep inside enemy territory. Now, I also found after this, a couple anecdotal stories about a Lieutenant David Palmer was one of the lucky ones that came back. He kept in his pocket, he kept 5 dimes given to him by his high school sweetheart as a lucky charm to help him bring him home to Seattle. And I found another thing that was really cool. After they came back from bombing runs, they did what they called smoking the ceiling. What do you think that meant?
Smoking the ceiling?
Yeah.
Smoking the ceiling was a ritual adopted by crews to record their combat missions, done with either a cigarette or a candle. And Lori's nodding her head that your dad talked about that.
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Oh, smoking the ceiling.
Yeah, smoking the ceiling. And he said that their ceiling was taken to and was at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. That part of, yeah. When we went there, we went to the Smithsonian. I went to Washington, D.C. with Mom and Dad, Kevin and I did, and it wasn't there. It wasn't there at that time, but it had been there because he must have been notified that they had taken it and it was there.
From his plane?
From his, I don't think it was on the plane. It was
Well, it had to be
barracks.
from the barracks.
It was on the
The
barracks.
When
barracks.
they came back
Oh,
into the
okay.
barracks, they would stand
Yeah.
on chairs or tables, and they would write the name of the city and the date of the bombing, the way it looked, at least in one of the illustrations I saw.
Yeah, it looked like it sounded to me like it was hash marks, almost like hash marks, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
what was it called? Smoking?
Smoking the ceiling.
Smoking the ceiling.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
Well, the combat diary. So this is all happening it's at Thurley. It's his bomb group that's lost 100 men. And the combat diary for this one reveals a little interesting point about what Bruce's squadron was doing. So, Aunt Lori, do you want to read this piece?
Yeah. As luck would have it, the sharpest air battle of the war came during a week when it was the Eager Beaver's turn to be off operations. The other 3 squadrons shared in the Great Raid, whose repercussions on Germany's war industry will unquestionably be great. Without fighter support, they challenged the enemy at its most sensitive spot and got through the target despite losses.
That's real downplaying. what we
Yeah.
so remember, this is the combat diary from them, right? So
At the time, yeah.
I think it's written.
They dressed
yeah,
it
at
up
the
a little
time.
bit, that's for
So
sure.
yeah, they're
to make
definitely
it sound as bad as it was.
not mentioning that ball bearing plant wasn't all that great to destroy.
I read in Bomber Mafia that they were up and running within a week. The ball bearing plant.
Oh, great. So that's so they're definitely spinning it a little bit. They got through the target despite losses, just losses. Not we're not going to mention how many. But the most interesting part of this is that it was the Eager Beaver's turn to be off operations. So that, if you remember from last week, is the name of Bruce's squadron from the bomb group. So he's part of the 306 bomb group, but he was off that day. He had the day off.
yeah, well,
From Schweinfurt.
you 3 probably would not have been here.
Yeah, that's.
No, I
that's-
doubt it.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
thank goodness the rotation worked out the way it did.
Yeah.
And it does always make me think that Bruce seemed to be in just kind of like the right place at the right time. I said this last week. Like, he didn't go to Munster all the way. He went to the uneventful Coesfeld part of the
Coesfeld,
mission, right? And he flew in Gdynia, but not clearly in the crazy formation that they did. And I mean, I guess he ran into some stuff in Bremen, but he managed to.
There's another
Make it
story.
back.
There's another story that I think Mitch might know about a scapula. Do you know about the scapula? Do you know that story?
I
hung
don't
in the
remember
basement.
this.
Okay,
I
it
remember
hung in the basement for a long time, and Kevin came one time to look for it. It's a thing that you wear. It's from Catholic. I mean, it's a Catholic piece. It's material, and I think it has a saint on it, and it had a front and back picture. I remember what they looked like, and Dad had it in his barracks, and it was windy, and it blew out the. Again, this is the story.
Okay.
It blew out the barracks, and he went to go get it, and the barracks were bombed.
shelled.
Shell went into the
that's right.
barracks.
Oh,
Forgotten that.
So he just obviously thought that, obviously divine intervention had to be with his faith, knowing that,
I mean,
the Lord brought him out of there. He was a lucky man. He was a lucky man on a lot of those things, or God had a bigger plan for him. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
It seems that he's
I'd forgotten that story.
incredibly
Yeah.
lucky here. He had the day off
Yeah.
at Schweinfurt. But I can only imagine though, like so you have your group has your immediate squadron has the day off, but then all these other men from the other squadrons don't come back after that. So
Maybe
I mean,
a
then
little
he's still.
survivor's guilt, yeah.
I know.
Well,
but
like
he's-
they stand, the guys that were left behind, they stand and wait for the planes to come. And then some come in and they stand and wait. And no more come.
Yeah.
That had to be just heartbreaking.
That
I know.
Masters of the Air really covered that very well.
Yeah, they did.
Very
Yeah.
well.
The
And he
numbers-
says, you're not going to notice any change in me. It's really affected the other guys. So I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not sure, but
He had a very strong faith.
he did.
It's very interesting that he even talked to you guys about the war, because most of these people didn't.
Forgotten about that.
He didn't.
I mean, you're
he didn't
coming up
say
with all
very,
kinds of
Well, I know,
stories.
but those were very few and far between.
Okay.
I mean, he didn't really talk too much about it. No,
Oh.
but
Wow.
Well, we're going to finish with an excerpt from a letter from October 26th. This one's maybe a little bit later. I don't know. In his own words.
you asked, or I guess it was Helen who asked, about the name of my ship. I thought I'd written it to you that I named it O'Reilly's Daughter. However, for reasons best answered later, damn the censor, I have another one now, and it's as yet unnamed. But I think the name will be Michigan Miss, sorry.
Yeah, Miss.
Miss.
M-I-S-S.
Because this talk is bordering on censorship, I'll just leave it as is. Do you think Michigan Miss is okay for my new ship? There are so few fellows from Michigan here. I thought it would be at least let them know we were on the map.
So he didn't write the word damn. He wrote D-N. So I guess he wasn't bleeping out the word darn, so I assumed it was damn, so I put that in there. So now we know why Michigan Miss was named, because I think episode 1 or 2 of this, we talked about his planes, and we were trying to figure out why the name. So we knew Captain and His Kids was from a cartoon, so you guys had known that, but we didn't know Michigan Miss, and I guess sort of. I think it's just because it's from, he wants to be from Michigan and show people he's from
There are not a lot
Michigan.
of Michigan Flyers, I guess.
Yeah. But what about O'Reilly's daughter? Who's O'Reilly?
No.
Is that a real person? You
Well,
all know? Who's
We'll have
O'Reilly's
to look
daughter?
at that one picture of the crew and see if there's an O'Reilly there. I don't know
Oh,
if it's one of the
maybe.
crew members had a daughter. I don't know.
Could be. I don't know. Either way, he can't say what happened to O'Reilly's daughter. But we could probably guess that it hit some damage during Black Week or before, maybe during Bremen, the raid of the wheat fields or whatever. But yeah, so I just thought that was kind of funny. We get a new plane, so he's got a new one. He's not even to Captain and His Kids yet. That comes after this.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening to Letters Home. We hope you continue to listen as we go through Bruce's story. You can listen to Letters Home on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or the Lowell Historical Museum website and YouTube channel. New episodes drop every Thursday. The Lowell Historical Museum has digitized versions of Bruce's letters so you can read them in full, along with primary sources for most of the people, places, and events we've talked about here today, plus more. You can also follow the Lowell Historical Museum on Facebook and the Letters Home podcast on Instagram at Letters Home Lowell. Thank you to Roger McNaughton for our podcast music and to WRWW 92.3 FM for letting us record in their studio at Lowell High School every week. Tune in or stream WRWW at lowellradio.org. See you next time.